Hey friends, Heather here. Welcome to a special throwback episode of the Lucky Few podcast. We're still shifting the narrative and shouting the worth through this holiday season, and we're super excited to get to bring to you again, or maybe for the first time, some of our very favorite episodes from the year. And one of my absolute all-time favorite episodes for 2020, maybe ever, is the interview that I got to have with Shelley Gottsagen, who is mother to Zack Gottsagen, who is the man with Down syndrome, the one and only. He's famous. He's very famous. He was in Peanut Butter Falcon. And in February of this year, he was the first person with Down syndrome to ever present at the Oscars. So I got to get on a call with his mom right after he had that moment of presenting at the Oscars. And she and I got to have a conversation that blew my socks off and blessed me to my core. Shelley Gottsagen is an absolute rock star, and her son is wonderfully talented. And this conversation is one that if you missed it, you are lucky now to get to listen to it. Or if you did listen to it, to listen again, because I know it's one that I've gone back to and listened to just to hear her wisdom and to hear her share about her advocacy work and about her son, Zack Gottsagen, who was the star of the Peanut Butter Falcon, which also, if you haven't seen that movie, tonight is the perfect time to watch that movie with your loved ones. So I'm so excited to get to re-release this episode. Thank you for joining us, friends, and welcome to the Lucky Few podcast.
All right. Hey, this is Micah.
Hey, Micah. This is Heather.
Hey, I'm just realizing we didn't introduce ourselves. Hi, everybody. We usually do. Hi. How are you, Heather?
I am doing good. I'm good. I'm so stinking excited for everyone to hear this interview. So let me set the stage.
Okay, set it.
Okay, I got invited by our good friend Amanda Booth. She's been on the podcast before. And if you don't know her, Amanda Booth is a supermodel who then had a son with Down syndrome and quickly stepped up as an advocate in the Down syndrome space and is real big on representation mattering, and her son has signed her son up for modeling. And so she's been a big voice in the space. So she got invited to go to this. It wasn't the initial screening of the movie, but before the movie was released in theaters, there were a handful of theaters that did screenings and Q&A with some of the actors and the directors. So she invited us to one in LA when I lived near Los Angeles, and Zack was there, and Shia LaBeouf, Shia, yes, who also stars. I think I said his name wrong.
Is it LaBeouf? I always have said LaBeouf.
I don't know though. I just said it LaBeouf that one time. Shia LaBeouf.
It was just an oof of LaBeouf.
And the directors. So there was a Q&A after. So anyways.
Okay.
We are meeting for dinner beforehand, and we're at this pizza place right near the theater, and I'm with like a bunch of people, and I look behind the person I'm talking to, behind my friend, and there is Zack. And I'm like, whoa. This is the star of the movie. So there's like an entourage with him. So we go over there and like introduce ourselves. So we're just about to go watch Peanut Butter Falcon and take pictures with him. And then his mom is there. And I don't know about you, but anytime I can talk to a mother of an adult with Down syndrome, I am like kind of obnoxious about it. So I'm talking to her, asking her all the questions, then getting her phone number and saying, I know that we just met and I'm not a creeper. I would love to have you on this podcast that we do. I would love to have you share all this stuff. Can I have your phone number? And she was so gracious and gave us her phone number. And then for months now, we've been trying to get her on the show. And with the Peanut Butter Falcon being the success that it was, she and Zack have been just swamped. And last week, right after the Oscars, on the Oscars, the night of, I sent her a text message because I now have her phone number.
Oh, you're so cool.
And just said, like, congratulations. Like, we're celebrating. This is so great. I'm so happy for you. Huge congrats. And she replied back right away and said, thank you so much. It's been a really fun night. And then I decided to see if she could be on the podcast. So and like as soon as possible. And
just
made it happen. So normally we'll do interviews with like you and Mercedes and me. And I just sent you guys a text and said, Shelley can talk next week and I'm just going to record our conversation. And so she and I got to have this conversation and I was so blown away by her. I'm always curious about a person's experience when they end up being in such a space of advocacy. Like, what was your childhood like? You know, is there something ingrained in you? And this is going to be way off subject. Well, not off subject, but I would think it would be interesting to find out, like someone to do a study on people who end up having kids with Down syndrome, if they had a link to disability or something before. Because you did, I did, Mercedes did. And I know Mercedes and I adopted. But there's so many people I've met that it's like, I just knew in my gut when I was younger that my future would have this. And this, so I'm sure it's not everybody. It's probably just the handful of people I'm thinking of, but I would love
something in our DNA.
Study. I don't know, but all that to say, and she'll talk about this in the interview that you'll get to hear in a minute. She grew up in a home where her parents were fighting against segregated schools. And so she grew up with her parents as advocates. So she grew up only ever knowing advocacy. She was like a total feminist, all about the underdog, all about equal rights for people. That's just who she always was. And then she has Zachary and it followed her into that space. So I learned so much about her and just like, she's such a bad A. I'm not going to say the ASS word because then we'll have to make this explicit. And then Zachary's really cool. Like she told stories about him that are, I mean, almost shocking. There's a story about him going on a 5th grade trip all by himself. And then I'm thinking, oh, Mason's in 5th grade. Like I couldn't even imagine. And then I have all these thoughts of I'm hovering. I need to back off. Let my kid fly. I've like pinned their wings so that they'll stay with me.
Huh?
It's a different episode.
Yeah. Man, so, that's cool. Did you know that Zach was going to be a presenter? Because I was watching the Oscars and I'm sitting there with, first of all, my 11-year-old loves the Oscars. August and I are both little movie nerds. And so he invited 2 of his other movie nerd friends over to watch. And so we were all watching and we had this compiled list of who we thought was going to win and having competitions and stuff. And I see the back of a man walking up to the podium. And in my head, I thought, that man is walking like someone who has Down syndrome. Do you have that? Like, see, when I see people walking, totally. I'm like, my Down syndrome radar is like, ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
And so, and then it showed him and I just screamed. I was like, he has Down syndrome. And then I saw Shia LaBeouf and then I was like, oh, Peanut Butter Falcon. This is what's happening right now. But
so good. No, I did know, and maybe I spend more time on social media than you, or maybe you don't follow him on social media. He was talking about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Peanut Butter Falcon, they have an account too on Instagram, the Peanut Butter Falcon does. And so I did know that it was happening. And I think there was some there was some buzz earlier about maybe them being nominated, the movie being nominated in some capacity for an award, and it wasn't. So that felt disappointing because it's an exceptional movie in my opinion, as movies go, especially exceptional compared to other movies that have been made about people with Down syndrome. So I think there was a little bit of disappointment that wasn't the case, but then that they got to he was asked to present an award. And I mean, the Oscars were an exciting night because there was so many, what's the word I'm thinking of? So much history being made. Sorry, friends.
Yeah.
You know, with the movie that won Best
Parasite.
Film. Yeah, with Parasite. I mean, Parasite broke so many records and created history in so many ways. And that's all very exciting. And then there's a man with Down syndrome at the Oscars on the stage. And I was even curious, like, has someone with Down syndrome even ever been to the Oscars? Like in the room, period? I don't know. It's very possible, but we know never on the stage. And freaking he made history. And then I got to talk to his mom. Like, hey, how's it feel that your son literally made history?
Amazing.
It's so cool. So, okay, without further ado, friends, this is my conversation with Zack and it's not with Zack, I wish. This is my conversation with Shelley. So enjoy. So I have Shelley Gottsagen here with me. She is mother to the one and only Zack Gottsagen, who is the star of Peanut Butter Falcon and also the first person with Down syndrome to ever present an Academy Award at the Oscars. And this is a big deal. So I'm sure, Shelley, you've heard from so many different people in the Down syndrome community, just all of the pride that we're feeling as a community in this moment. And
yes.
So I have 2 kids with Down syndrome. I have an 11-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. And so you have blazed trails that I get to walk on more comfortably. And I'm so thankful for you and anyone who's come before me. I just have
thank you.
Yeah, deep gratitude, like real, genuine, deep gratitude. And then
I feel the same way about those that came before me. I mean, yeah. Zack was fortunate to have Chris Burke playing Corky on Life Goes On when he was growing up, and it was a role model for him, and it made him believe that he could be an actor. And I think as we continue, it's always, we're just building on each other and opening up more opportunities.
I love it. I agree completely. And I would love then, can you tell us a little bit about Zachary as a child? When did you know that he loved acting? At what point was it apparent that this was the path he was going to head down?
He told me at 3 years old that he was going to be an actor. He loved acting. Every time I took him anywhere where there was a stage, I could not keep him off the stage, which I'm shy and he's not. And it was embarrassing. But he just loved the stage. He loved when he was really little, when he was in preschool. One day we were waiting for the school bus, and we realized that he forgot to bring something for show and tell. So I'm like, okay, I'll wait right here, run in the house, grab something for show and tell, and I'll hold the bus if it comes. So he ran it back out with a toilet plunger, and I said, hey, what's that? And he was so short that his mouth reached the top of it, and he thought it was a microphone and sang a song into the toilet plunger.
Oh my gosh. And did he bring it to school? That was what he got to bring?
Well, I just couldn't see sending him on the school bus. I should have. I told his teacher, and she said, oh, next time send it.
I love it. That's so classic. And then do you mind sharing, how old is Zachary? And then how old is he when he started the film, The Peanut Butter Falcon?
Zack is 34. He'll be 35 in April. And he filmed it in 2017, so, almost 3 years ago. So I guess he was about 31 at the time.
Had he done other acting projects, like big projects, prior to Peanut Butter Falcon?
Nothing as big as Peanut Butter Falcon, which, is a full-length, feature movie. But he'd done a lot of acting. He was fully included in school. He was the first person with Down syndrome in our county to go into regular ed. And when it came time for him to transition from elementary to middle school, they were not they fought me all the way right from the beginning, but he ended up deciding that he wanted to go to this middle school for performing arts. And I thought, it's hard enough to get him included in a neighborhood school, but now he wants this. But he auditioned and got in.
Wow.
And that was with the help. We used his speech therapy time rather than just doing drills to actually help him prepare to audition.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Smart.
And then, so he was in a lot of plays and things. And that's also when he discovered how much he loved dance and got involved with dance as well. And he's an incredible dancer. And then he auditioned to get into Dreyfus School of the Arts, which is a very prestigious magnet school. It's a public school, but it's very difficult to get into. And he wanted to be a theater major. And at first he was rejected, but then I pulled the history of the school and saw that they had not taken any students with disabilities. And I filed with the Office for Civil Rights, who then did an investigation. And Zack was not the only one with a disability that wanted to get in. And then they were forced to re-audition them. And some got in, some didn't, but at least they were finally given some accommodations and another opportunity.
Shelley, so was that for high school or that was a post?
That was for high school.
That was for high school. Okay. So before you had Zachary, were you always an advocate like that? Did you have like a fierceness in you to fight for what was right? Or did it come more? Okay. Yeah. So that felt like a natural.
Yeah. I grew up in a household where we were actively fighting for civil rights on race issues, because I'm so old that schools were segregated at that point. I grew up in Philadelphia, and we fought in my elementary school, did become racially integrated. And then, so I learned how to fight for things, and I've been a feminist, way back from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. So, and then I got involved with the disability rights movement when I was in college. I had friends that used wheelchairs. I had a friend that was blind. So it was something that I became familiar with the laws, but much more so after Zack was born.
Do you think, do you feel like you can look back at your life and see it leading up to, like, you needed to be this person, and then you get to be Zack's mom?
I just feel like it's a privilege that I got to be Zack's mom.
Yeah, I love. So good.
I mean, he's an excellent self-advocate and always was right from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And when the school district wanted him to go to a segregated school, I took him to look at the school, and we walked around, and it had cool things like a swimming pool, which schools don't usually have, public schools. Mm-hmm. But he said, I do not belong here. And he said, I am not going.
Wow.
And he was only 3 years old, but he was determined.
Yeah.
And I agreed with him. I mean, and I was fortunate because we have a strong group of parents, both from the Gold Coast Down Syndrome organization here in Palm Beach County, and there were other parent groups, and we all worked really hard together. So having the support from other parents was critical. And when we had IEP meetings, we all went together to each other's kids' meetings, whoever was available, so that nobody was left to fight the systems alone. I think that's really important.
I think so too. Support. I think collaboration in supporting each other is where it's at, instead of trying to be the best, or have the most. It's all about working together. I think that's how we make progress,
Yeah.
So we need to talk about so many things, including the Oscars, and that your son is making history, literally making history. And I want to go back real quick, though, because most of our listeners are younger moms or moms raising younger kids with Down syndrome.
Yeah.
And I love what you said, that you are an advocate, but that Zack's also a self-advocate. And what information or what tips would you have for moms to help their child to become the self-advocate that they can be, instead of taking the advocacy all on for ourselves?
Part of it was getting him involved in meetings very, very early. And part of that was out of necessity. I was a single mom, and I didn't have resources to pay for childcare, and meetings were usually, evenings, whatever. So he came with me to different things, and he watched and he learned from observation at a really young age. The first 2 words that he put together when he was learning to speak were meeting adjourned.
No way.
So I think it was really being exposed early and encouraging him. Everything that he did, because the expectations of the medical community were so low. I mean, they told me he would never walk or talk. He'd be a total vegetable, with their words. And they wanted me to put him in an institution when he was diagnosed. And I was like overwhelmed. I just looked at them and went, hey, I'm a vegetarian. I'll take my vegetable to go.
Wow. Wow.
And I just walked out with him. But I knew, I grew up with a friend on my block who had Down syndrome, and I knew that what they were saying wasn't true. I mean, my friend Bruce was a history buff, and he and I used to read history books together. I mean, I knew that, and that was before there was educational rights and everything else. So, that it's really just encouraging, having him speak up for himself, always not making decisions for him from a very early age, giving him choices, whether it was, are you going to eat broccoli or green beans? Not broccoli or candy, but
right. Yes, the magic of choices.
Yeah.
Just that exposure, like you said, exposing him to things, and then the power of exposure. We talk about that a lot on our podcast, and the power of representation. And Gail Ford Williamson, who is that his agent? Did
yes,
she represent him? Okay. So we had Gail on the podcast, and I would like to say Gail's become a friend of mine. She's lovely. But she wrote on Facebook right after he presented, she said, milestone, take that, every MD who ever told a parent how little their child born with Down syndrome would do. And it's exactly what you're saying. I mean, to think how he was introduced into your life, and then to think back to a couple days ago where he's standing on the stage at the Academy Awards. Tell all the mamas, I'm just feeling with my mama heart, all that led up to that, like the red carpet, and then he's on the stage presenting. What is that like for you as a mom?
Well, it was actually terrifying. To be honest, I was so nervous. He was fine. He was not nervous at all. He's like, I got this, no problem.
Oh, gosh.
He has a lot of confidence, which I think that's also one of the really critical things, is raising kids with lots and lots of praise and building their self-confidence from the moment they're born. I mean, even, I felt connected to him before he was born. I talked to him all the time, and I didn't know that he would have Down syndrome, but it didn't matter to me.
So
that it was really encouraging him right from the start. I mean, everything he did, I applauded, and I think that was probably part of the issue, because now he thinks he should have applause for everything, and I think that's what pushed him on the stage.
I love it. That's so good.
But, the first time he rolled over, the first time he went and was able to go across the room and get a toy, every one of those developmental milestones I looked at as a miracle. And they are. I mean, it's so interesting. Child development is fascinating anyway.
I know, it really is. I've always said, when my oldest was real young and people would ask me, what's the best part about having a child with Down syndrome? And there's lots of parts, but one of the things I loved the most was celebrating those milestones, the little things that I think other parents don't see as a miracle. It's as miraculous when other kids do it, it's like when she took her first step, it's like, this is so miraculous. And granted, she was almost 3 years old, and just being able to celebrate that and be able to see it for the miracle it is, I think is such a gift for me, raising kids with Down syndrome. It's been such a gift.
It is. I mean, it really is. And, one thing from when Zack was really young, and every day that I see him, he'll just look at me and say, I love my life.
It's amazing.
How many people say that? I don't know anybody else. I mean, he really, he lives every minute fully. And, I think that's incredible.
I think it's incredible. I think it should be our goal, right? I feel like when I watch a lot of different people with Down syndrome, and granted, everyone's their own individual, but there's so many people who I feel are like Zachary, and I watch them and think this should be the goal. Like being more like people with Down syndrome should be the goal, you know?
Exactly. I mean, we're all people are so caught up in their silly stuff and, you know, but they're not experiencing the joy of life.
Right.
And I mean, I know for Zach, you know, he loves connecting with people, and he's very in touch with his emotions. And I think that, you know, we're so, as a society, taught to hide our emotions, you know, and it's so much, the quality of his life is really great, despite all the discrimination and difficulties that he's had to face.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to the stage. So he's on stage.
Right.
Well, I'm sorry. We need to talk for at least 10 seconds about the red carpet. You walked the red carpet with him, I'm assuming?
They
or close
actually...
by, or no?
We walked to the red carpet. They asked me to not walk on it, but he did.
Oh, how was that?
He walked it with Shia.
Okay.
And I walked, there was like a barricade. I walked behind it.
You got to walk behind it.
Yeah, because he's the star. I'm just the mom.
Just the mom. Such an important task to be just a mom.
Yep.
So you are walking behind. Were there moments of tears, or you're just terrified at this point? Like you said, you were feeling nervous.
I just was, you know, my concern was that he'd be able to see the teleprompter.
Yeah.
I knew he would hold his cool, and he walked with Shia, and they are such close friends, and they love each other so much, and they, you know, really connect with each other.
Yeah.
And there's nobody else I would rather him walk with than Shia. So,
that's so great.
I was so glad that they were presenting together, because they feed off of each other. They both encourage each other, and they have their own, you know, inside jokes and their own humor, and, you know, they consider themselves to be brothers.
It's really obvious, I think, from the interactions I see of them. I went to one of the earlier screenings, and we actually met in a restaurant. That's how I got your phone number.
Right, I remember that.
I stalked you. Yeah, we saw you, and I'm like, okay, give me your phone number. And then thankfully you're very gracious, and here we are. And so I got to watch a Q&A after watching an early release of the film with Shia and Zachary, and it was so obvious how genuine their friendship is, and just how much they mean to each other and how much they have to offer each other. It was fun to see, and then really great to see after, you know, even while they were presenting, there was a moment where Shia gave a little giggle, and you've been asked about this in different articles. New York Post, there was a New York Post article that came out, and people were saying negative things about Shia. I was furious. I mean, oh yeah, tell us more about that. What were people's reactions, and then your reaction to them?
Oh, you know, people love to put other people down.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I mean, they were saying that Shia was laughing at Zach. And, you know, they have no understanding of their relationship. I mean, honestly, I think what was going on is that the cards, the envelopes at the Oscar, who the winner is, they're difficult to open. I noticed several other people really fumbling with them, and then I noticed that some of the other presenters would open them up while they were showing the clips from whatever movie that they were presenting about. Excuse me. So I think that was what was going on, but, you know, I mean, I was just outraged when people were putting Shia down, because that's not who he is. He has so much integrity, and, you know, he and Zach respect each other. And, you know, I mean, we all laugh at things. I didn't think he was, I mean, I know he wasn't laughing at Zach.
Right.
I just, there's no way that was happening.
Yeah. And I'm glad that they've reached out to you and you can speak to that, because I think it seems obvious, even from my perspective, just how genuine the relationship is. So even if there's some kind of
I actually reached out to the press, which I never do.
Oh, wow.
But I feel like Shy is my kid too, and nobody's going to put my kid down.
I'm sure he's grateful to have you in his corner. So if we watched the Oscars and we watched your son shine on stage, and it was a moment that, it was historic. It was a historic moment. And so you're sitting in the seat, and you and I were talking a little bit beforehand, and you shared that, like, after, you were just so nervous up until then, and then once it was done, you kind of exhaled. But has there been a moment for you that's really hit you, that your son literally just made history, and going back to that beginning time and knowing everything that you've done as his mom? And yes, he's doing a lot of the work, but let's be honest, we are a force to be reckoned with behind the scenes.
Yeah. I think for me, it's been the self-advocacy that he's done that has really captured my heart.
Mm.
He's very, very diplomatic, and I'm not.
Okay.
So, it went back to a very early time. This first day of first grade, I was scared to death. I put him in, I signed him up for school without telling them that he had Down syndrome, because I read the law, and whatever placement a child starts out, that's the stay put placement, and then if a party opposes it, they have to file for due process. So I thought, well, I don't have the money to get a lawyer and file, So everybody else just signs their kid up for school. Why don't I just do that? Why do I have to share that?
I love it.
So I did, and the first day I picked him up from the after-school program, and I said, how'd it go? And I was like a wreck, all day waiting to hear. And he said, well, that kid over there punched me in the belly. And I said, and how did you handle it? And he said, I went and told a teacher. I said, and then what? He goes, she put him in timeout. And I said, okay. He goes, no, not okay. He didn't apologize to me. How is he going to respect me and be my friend?
Mm.
So I said, what do you want to do? He goes, I want him to apologize. I want to be able to sit down and talk.
Oh, my gosh.
So we did. We got the teacher, and she got the kid to come over, and they ended up becoming friends. But he said, people have to respect me. I respect them.
That is incredibly diplomatic for a human, let alone a first grader.
I know. I was, it was all through the years. He was on safety patrol in elementary school, and I don't know if it's the same where you are in California, but in Florida, the safety patrol gets to go to Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
for a trip, and they said he couldn't go because he has Down syndrome. And so I said, okay, let's put that in writing to the Office for Civil Rights. And
can I quote you?
Sure.
Oh my gosh.
And of course they came down and I said, I need a speedy ruling because I didn't want him to miss the trip. And they said he could go if I went too. But I had just taken in a foster child that I later adopted. But when you have a foster child, you can't leave the state.
Right.
And besides, he wasn't going to have the same experience if his mom is along. The whole point of going away is to be away from your mom.
Yeah.
So we did get a decision, and they said that he has the right to go, the same right as any other child who was on safety patrol. So the morning we showed up for the trip, we walked in and they gave him a wheelchair.
What?
And I was about ready to explode, and he just looked at me. He goes, calm down, let me handle this. And that was before people had wheels on their luggage. And he just called out, anybody who wants to be in my group, we can throw all our luggage on the wheelchair and we don't have to carry it through D.C.
No way.
Everybody wanted to be in his group.
Yes. What grade was that?
5th grade.
Oh my gosh. So my daughter's in 5th grade. And again, every person is different, but I can't even imagine. I mean, that's so great. Get it, Zack? Great.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have to say a word. I just stood there and like, okay, that's cool. So it was things like that. And then, when he finished high school, they were just starting to have some programs in community colleges that were accepting people with intellectual or developmental disabilities. And they chose 8 students, and he was one of the 8. Mm-hmm. And he started the program. And I was so excited, that I thought, oh, this is great, this is wonderful. But about after 3 months, he called a meeting, and he invited me, some other advocates, and people from the school district and people from the college. And he said, I might be confused about things in life, so can you clarify? I thought when you go to college you get credits, but all you're letting me do is audit classes, and I'm not getting credits. And then part of the day you're having me work in the cafeteria, but I thought when you work you get paid. So can you explain the difference between this program and slave labor?
No. Oh my gosh.
And I was like so happy that he was in this program, and he said, so I'm letting everybody know, even my mom, that I'm quitting this program because I'm not being given the opportunity or the respect that I deserve.
Okay.
And then he went on, he goes, I took regular history classes. I understand fascism.
Oh my god!
And I was like, oh my God,
Okay.
But he was right. He had, he had worked since he was 16, and he looked forward to his paychecks.
Yeah, as he should. Oh my gosh, Zack, he's got some of his mama's advocacy blood in his body, obviously.
Yeah, but he's better than I am.
I love that. He's learned from the best, I would have to say.
Thank you.
That's so great. I just feel like I want to ask a million questions. I am so thankful to get to talk to moms who are ahead of me on the journey. And
yeah, that was the biggest help for me too.
Yeah.
I was very, very fortunate when I moved to Florida when he was 10 months old. I worked for the state with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and I got to meet families of everybody from newborns to elderly with all different disabilities, and find out how parents raise their kids. And it was really interesting because I'm a social worker, but as a parent, our instinct is to protect and possibly to overprotect.
Yeah.
But I was able to see young adults and older adults and talk to their parents, and the ones with the best outcomes were the ones that lived more inclusive lives that were not overprotected at all. Mm-hmm. I had one father who was a doctor, and his son, obviously to my eyesight, had Down syndrome. Mm-hmm. But I asked about that, and he said, oh, no, I refused. I never had his chromosomes tested, so nobody can say that he does.
Huh. That's interesting.
Which I thought was interesting, but this young man was driving a car, living in his own apartment, and working, doing data input in computer systems. And I was like, whoa, wow. I'm glad I'm learning this when my son is young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. When he was little, did you talk about Down syndrome? Or did you take more like that doctor's approach?
No, I talked about it. We were very the first thing I did when we moved to Florida, he was 10 months old, was look for a Down syndrome organization. Mm-hmm. That's what we moved from New York, and we were involved with, many families that had kids with Down syndrome. And for me, that was really important. There was that level of understanding where you don't have to pretend or explain or, you know, you don't get that condensation that some people, you know, it was much more genuine interactions. And, you know.
Totally. It's that power of the me too. Like, I see you and I get it. Definitely. I think it's interesting. I'm young in the journey because, like I've said, my oldest is only 11, and I consider myself an advocate for people with Down syndrome. And I try to mostly be a listener and a learner in the space before I step into it with opinions. But I hear people, like you said, about that doctor who said, well, we're not even going to talk about Down syndrome. We're not going to have him tested. And I'm not judging that. That's someone's choice to make. But I feel really excited that my kids have Down syndrome. And I feel like what I'd like to see the narrative shift do is that Down syndrome's a negative shift from negative to an asset. And we're going to
definitely.
You know,
I remember how disappointed my daughter was when she found out she didn't have Down syndrome.
Yeah.
She said, oh, we go to all these Down syndrome meetings? I thought I was the one with Down syndrome. I said, no, your brother. And she's like, oh, he gets everything.
Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah, so I love he just is such an awesome person to have lighting the way for our community. I feel
Thank you.
I've met him once in a restaurant, and I just feel so proud to have him on this journey ahead of us, and to have you gone ahead of us and to have this conversation with you feels like such an honor. And before we sign off, 2 questions. So one is, what's next? What is next for you guys?
Well, let's see. He has a movie coming out that he had a small role in. It's called Best Summer Ever, and that'll be premiering at South by Southwest in March. He just shot a short film called At Last with the comedian George Lopez. We're in discussions on him having a television show.
Okay.
And we've turned down some things already because we're being really choosy, and we only want him to have roles that are positive, you know, portrayals. And, you know, he has a responsibility now as a role model for so many that, you know, he takes that seriously. And so, but there is another possible movie, and, you know, it's just every day we get different opportunities.
I like that.
He's doing a lot of public speaking, and what's very exciting is he was just invited to World Down Syndrome Day in Norway.
Cool.
So that is, like, super exciting. But it's all been incredible. Like, every day is just so unbelievable. You know? I mean, it's more than I could have ever dreamed of. Wow. And I try to dream really big, but this is bigger.
Yes. I love that. I feel like we're just gonna end it there. And just encouraging our parents, and I feel encouraged to just continue to dream so big.
Absolutely. And that's what Zack tells other people with Down syndrome. He said, when he spoke into different groups, he said, don't let anybody put limitations on you. There's nothing you can't do. Just, you know, he's always telling people, stay in school, study as hard as you can, and, you know, dream big and follow your dreams.
Yes.
I mean, I've heard him say that so many times, and it's like, yeah, that's true. I mean, it just comes right out of his heart when he speaks. And, yeah.
Well, I'm so
that's
thankful.
What he's done.
Yeah. So thank you. Congratulations to you, and a huge congratulations to Zack. For people listening, the movie is Peanut Butter Falcon, and if you have not seen it, you need to see it. It's phenomenal. And then you just need to be following along. Zack's on Instagram, and it's just his full name, Zachary Gottsagen. Did I say that right? Yes.
Yeah.
And we'll have links in all of our show notes. And I'm so excited to see what he's up to. And I'm going to be following along. And again, thank you for taking the time, Shelley, to
Sure. Thank you so much, Heather.
And to share.
I wish you the very, very best with your children. It sounds like you have 2 wonderful children.
Yes. I have a middle daughter, too, who doesn't have Down syndrome, but all 3 of them.
3 wonderful children. Yeah.
3 gifts, yes.
Yeah, no, that's, it's a journey, but it's a great journey.
It's beautiful. Well, thank you, Shelley. Have an awesome day and have so much fun these next few days and weeks and months as things are, there's a lot going on for you guys. So have fun with it all.
It's great. It's really great. Thank you so much, Heather.
Yeah,
it's been wonderful talking to you.
Thank you. You too. And we'll be in touch.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Okay. We are back. Heather, thanks so much for sharing that interview with us. What a treat to have Shelley, to hear her experience, to have her on the podcast. We are just so proud of Zack and of Shelley for the ways they are shifting the Down syndrome narrative. And we are just a reminder to all of you out there, if you have not seen the Peanut Butter Falcon, go
Today's
do that.
The day.
Today is the day.
Right now. Yes. Movie night.
Yes, movie night.
It does have a lot of bad language in it. And so it depends on your children. My kids haven't seen it yet. I'm a little bit of a prude in that regard. But that's really the only thing. It's just the bad language. That's kind of the only part. They dropped quite a few F-bombs. I like it. But my kids haven't seen it yet. We will. But you should see it 1,000,000%. And if your child is over 8, probably. Has August seen it?
August hasn't seen it yet.
Okay.
I've tried to push for it, but I think he has some fears. That's a whole other thing.
Other episode. My nieces and nephews have seen it. Some of my nieces and nephews, they are 12, 14, and 10. Okay. They've all seen it.
Yeah.
So again, I'm a little prudish in what my kids watch and getting better. But Shelley, I said this to her and I will say it 1,000,000 times. People and everyone needs to hear this, and we recognize this. People like Shelley have gone before us and paved a way. And I think that with social media, because social media is so saturated with a younger group and a younger generation, because it's been around for 10 years. And there are people who have older kids, and there are older people with Down syndrome, self-advocates on social media, but not nearly as many 5-year-olds with Down syndrome and their families, that we have to remember that yes, we are making big waves right now, that more has been done in the last 10 years than the prior, or even the last 5 years than the prior 30 years. But people came before us and made it possible. People like Shelley. Yes. So, and then the fact that Zack was on that stage at the Oscars is going before us. And the day will come when our kids see themselves in all the places because of people like Zack and Shelley. So forever, we are thankful to you for showing up. So there you go. Keep showing up. Yep. So important.
Amazing.
All right, friends, we hope you enjoyed that special throwback episode, that you got to learn as much from Shelley as I got to when I spoke with her. Thank you for listening. Make sure that you tune in next week to hear another one of our all-time favorite episodes from 2020. And as always, a huge thank you to our editor, Josh Avis, our producer, Val Schleter, our sponsor, and to all of you who have shared the Lucky Few podcast with friends, who have listened faithfully and cheered us on. Don't forget to subscribe, to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And remember that you are, dear listener, supporting your loved one with Down syndrome. You are a shouter of worth. You are a narrative shifter. So keep on keeping on. We are here cheering for you. I hope you are having a wonderful, beautiful, and blessed holiday season so far. We'll be together with you on the next episode of the Lucky Few podcast.